Hey, what's going on everyone? Justin here, and we're going to be doing my favorite staple booktube video of the month, which is my favorite upcoming nonfiction releases for the month. And this is going to be for December 2024, and let's just go ahead and get started. So we got 2 ancient histories, 2 medieval histories, and 1 nature title, so hopefully nature starts to make a comeback, I guess, in 2025, but let's just get right into the first one. So first up we have The Roads to Rome, A History of Imperial Expansion by Catherine Fletcher. And I read another book earlier this year, I can't remember what was it called, like Travels with Caesar, or On the Footsteps of Caesar, something like that. But this one is all about following the different imperial Roman roads throughout Europe, many of them which are kind of still in use today, and kind of it's I guess just a broad mishmash of all kinds of I guess intellectual history on empire, expansionism, colonialism, adding provinces to the empire, how the provinces were different, trade routes, using the roads, military expansion, why they used the roads and built the roads, and things like that. So it's going to combine history and science, and engineering, all that kind of stuff, along with kind of the broader kind of macroscopic kind of concepts of imperialism and that kind of thing. I don't know, it just sounded really cool. And like I said, the other one I read earlier this year, in the Footsteps of Caesar or something like that, just wasn't my favorite. That was very middle of the road, and that was the author actually traveling on the roads, mostly by car and stuff, but it wasn't terrible, but just wasn't what I was looking for. And this feels kind of in the same vein of kind of following the roads, seeing how kind of the empire kind of grew, from kind of the local regional roads in Italy and that kind of stuff. So I think they'll be pretty interesting, and hopefully it pans out. And then for another one, we have a biography, which is Pompey the Great, the Roman Alexander by Lee Fratantuono. And I don't think I've ever read a biography of Pompey. Unfortunately, he does usually get cast as kind of either the bad guy or kind of just the foil to Julius Caesar, especially when you're kind of dealing with that initial triumvirate with Crassus, Caesar, and Pompey. He really, he didn't quite make that what's it called, not the heroic loser, but the romantic loser, kind of like Robert E. Lee or Hannibal, for example. He just didn't quite make it, even though he early in his career he does kind of have the stereotype of stealing everyone else's victories, such as Crassus' defeat of Spartacus, and he kind of does the little mop-up operation and gets all the credit and everything. But he really did do quite a few things, quite a few accomplishments. Probably most notably was actually kind of ridding the Mediterranean Sea of pirates in one kind of major naval campaign, which I think on its own was actually a really big thing. A lot of people forget, Julius Caesar was captured by pirates and held for ransom and everything. So lots of people really were at risk of pirates and all that kind of thing, and he kind of took care of it in one just kind of big ordeal there. So like I said, I don't think I've ever read just a straight up biography of Pompey. It's usually just as part of the triumvirate, or as, like I said, the foil and losing to Caesar in the kind of one of the last civil wars there. I shouldn't say really last civil war, but not even of that generation, because then we got Antony and Octavian, so scratch that. But like I said, I haven't read one, might as well read it. There's a Roman biography challenge I might be doing in 2025. I'm still contemplating. So granted, he doesn't actually fit into that challenge per se, but like I said, I think it'll be kind of cool to start reading up on some biographies. Though I really should read it too, because I've read biographies of Caesar. Let's see, I've read stuff on Octavian, Mark Antony, Cato, Cicero. So pretty much that last generation there, I've read lots of different biographies and just kind of books on the fall of the Republic. So I figured that'll be kind of a good lens to look at it through. Now let's move on to some medieval history. So this one is probably the one I'm most excited about, because it's got my favorite medieval figure. And this one is Stephen and Matilda's Civil War, Cousins of Anarchy by Matthew Lewis. And first of all, Cousins of Anarchy is a really great subtitle there. But Empress Matilda is if not my favorite, she's got to be one of my top 3 favorite medieval characters. figures, historical people. I don't know what is going on tonight. Apparently it was a long day at work and that sort of thing. But for those who don't know, effectively Matilda was was kind of the heir to the throne of England. However, when her father died, pretty much all the barons and nobles kind of reneged on their offer of allegiance there. And she was across the channel, and her cousin Stephen of Blois was like, well, I'm actually here. I think I'm just gonna, like, do it since Matilda's not here. And then we have the anarchy and, like, an English civil war and that kind of thing. But she's also got, like, cool history of herself, too. Empress of, like, the Holy Roman Empire, and, like, a Queen of Sicily, and some, like, Italian lands and things like that. So I think it's really cool. I've read one biography of Matilda. And she was featured, like, heavily in, like, another book that I read, kind of dealing with the era of the anarchy, though that wasn't really the main focus per se. But I think kind of a deep dive of the anarchy would just be kind of a fun read. And then next up we have Oathbreakers, the War of Brothers that Shattered an Empire and Made Medieval Europe. See, like, that's a long subtitle, not quite as pithy as Cousins of Anarchy there. This one's by Matthew Gabriel and David Perry. Now, they also wrote The Bright Ages, which is a pretty well-regarded history of like science in the Middle Ages, kind of dealing especially with, like, astronomy and that kind of thing, which was quite a bit of fun. This is all about Charlemagne's children, who, after Charlemagne, passes on. His children basically divide up the country or the empire, and don't get along well, and more civil wars kind of ensue. So it's going to be kind of all about kind of the collapse of the Carolingian Empire, and I think how that sort of leads to the development of, the French area becoming like France, and like the German area, or the more central area, kind of becoming like the German states and that kind of thing. I assume that based on, like, the subtitle, that's kind of what we're going with. I've read several biographies of Charlemagne at this point, or histories of, like, the era of Charlemagne, I guess I should say, but nothing directly just on his successors there. So yeah, I think it'll be pretty interesting, and this is also going to be dealing kind of with the most interesting thing that I'm hoping is going to be in there is kind of like the end of the defenses of, like, the Saxon shore and that kind of thing, because this is sort of the era when the Vikings are able to kind of make headway into continental Europe. During, like, Charlemagne's reign, he kind of did good enough to kind of keep them at bay a little bit. So I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing to learn about. And then lastly, we got Strange Survivors, How Organisms Attack and Defend in the Game of Life. And this is by One Pagan. And as you can tell by the title there, this is all about all the different offensive and, like, defensive mechanisms that different creatures have evolved to, fight each other and stay alive, over the course of evolution and that kind of thing. One of my very first nature books that I read since when I first started the channel was Animal Weapons by David Emblin, and it sounds like it's going to be kind of in that similar vein, and I found that one really interesting. That one was mostly focused on the really extreme weapons of, like, animal evolution, such as, like, overly massive antlers, and, like, mandibles, like in Hercules beetles and things like that, and how those, like, kind of came to be. I think this is going to be definitely a more, like, kind of general view of, different traits that animals have evolved and maybe why they have, and that kind of thing. So I think it's going to be pretty wide, broad encompassing, and I think that'll be really cool. Always on the lookout for great nature books. So there you have it. Those were the 5 books I thought were the most interesting coming out this month in December. Let me know if you have anything coming out in the near future that you're excited for. I'm always looking out for good recommendations and that kind of thing. But always remember, whatever you end up reading, read victoriously.